Imagine a story that you might tell tonight. Just bring to mind something that was important to you, that mattered for you, some moment in your life that for you really stands out. And you don't have to share it. You don't have to. But if you were going to tell a story tonight, what story might you tell?
Please put your hands together and welcome Playback Milwaukee Theatre.
What is Playback Theatre?
I am sitting here wanting.
It's a kind of improvisational theater, but a very specific kind.
We make art and theater out of your stories. So we listen to you, the audience, and we base our theater out of what you say is most important.
All right, say your name for us.
Amber.
So you have a story to share with us today.
Yeah.
Okay, where does your story take place?
Right outside of New York City.
Someone from the audience tells a true life memory, some moment from their life that's important.
There was a kind of a rough morning.
I'm always carrying a lot of things.
And a big sliver of the bottle went right into my wrist.
Everyone hears it. The audience, there's usually 3 or 4 players up on stage. When it's complete, the conductor turns to the audience and says,
Let's watch.
The playback players immediately stand up. There's no conferencing or conferring or huddling. They immediately launch into a theatrical and dramatic reenactment of that story.
She sees my heart, she sees me, and I see her.
The teller who's told the story, they stay sitting next to the conductor, up in the front, visible to the rest of the audience.
they're watching their story played back.
But the audience is able to also see them seeing their story.
So there's a dance that happens and we're all dancing it together. And at the end of that playback, tellers are in a lot of different places around it. They're definitely deeply moved and they're just in a really beautiful space. And then the visual artist will reveal the painting that she's done. Beautiful. And that then is shared with the entire audience and we all share in that moment of really being able to see each other. And then we invite the next story.
You have this boy that you like and you have this girl that you like and they both like you.
But I don't know how to tell the other one because it's confusing.
So since everybody in the room has heard the story, it doesn't necessarily have to be sort of like a linear, straight play acting of what was said. It often takes a much more stylistic and movement-oriented presentation. Whatever it actually ends up looking like, what we strive for is connection to the meaning and the heart and the emotion and the feeling of the teller and what was important to them about telling that story.
So if the story's funny, it'll be true to the being funny. If it's a little more tragic, it'll have that element to it.
Basically the players, the playback players, they feel within themselves what is it that was important to the person who told that story, about that story. And they find something inside of themselves and they bring that out as a gift both to the teller and to the audience.
I would actually get along with her more than I would get along with him because I'm scared of boys. Because how they would treat me because I have a disability and they always want the bad girl to be their friend.
We have to make spaces for each other's stories because that's what gets us to begin to connect with each other's humanity. There's very few places where we can share our story to be with what is, without trying to fix it, without trying to contort it into something else, just being with the story as it is, being with ourselves as we are. If we can't get with where we are in a moment, we can't move anywhere. We can't even have anything be any different because we don't know where we're at.
A deeply confusing moment. Let's watch.
Who we are, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. Any practice that allows us to just slow things down for a moment and to allow ourselves to see things about ourselves and to be with it. But you haven't just done it by yourself. You've done it in the presence of this community of people and the collection of people that make up the playback team.
There are many, many, many gifts happening this evening. So I want to thank all of the storytellers for sharing your stories and helping us remember things that matter so deeply to us. What we as playback players have is a process and a method that we use to honor stories. But we can't do it by ourselves. We need a story. We need a teller from the audience to share something of themselves, to have it come to life. Otherwise, there's nothing happening.
Thanks for coming.
So it's really, really valuable for any one teller to decide to come have a seat in that chair because they're not only telling for themselves, they're also telling for the audience. When the audience comes, they often don't know they're going to dance. But even if they're sitting back, they're still invited because they're in the room. There are meaningful gifts and meaningful stories in that audience. So we're going to have a meaningful experience together. And so we invite them to dance with us. And usually they say yes. Usually they do.